Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking... Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about why you, a very smart athlete, are overthinking your rehab and why it's still keeping you stuck. So when working with patients in the clinic, some of the athletes and active adults I see with recurring injuries are the smartest people who come in. They've often researched their injuries heavily, and if they're not sure what it is, they've got a list of things that they think it could probably be. They follow plans to a T, they do their rehab like it's going to be life or death. But the problem is they're still not getting lasting results with their rehab programs. If you're one of these people, this video is probably going to help you out. So with behavior like this, researching your injuries is actually a good thing, because wanting to understand what your body is going through is a real strength. It helps you to get a realistic expectation of potential timelines for how long you're going to be out of full training for, and it's going to help you to set realistic goals along the way for your rehab to get back to where you need to be. And all of these things keep you engaged in your rehab, which is a real positive. The thing with all of this though is most people will fall down because they're focusing on the wrong things, and that's the major problem here, is that we're hyper fixated on all the finer details, and we're not focusing enough on our training load and progression over time. And when I say that, it makes it sound really simple, and almost, I think a lot of people or a lot of athletes like yourself, they don't want to try and dumb it down to that level of simple just training load and progression, because when you're doing that, you feel like you're missing out on something. You feel like if you be way more specific with certain aspects of your rehab, you're going to get better results. But in reality, it's actually not true. If you simply just take a step back or zoom out on what you're doing and just focus more on your training load and progression over time and doing it in a smart fashion, you're probably going to find you get a better result. Instead, you tend to be the type of person who is trying to optimize specific exercise selection or a specific biomechanical movement with your training. So for example, if that's running, you're probably going to be looking at running technique that is going to be super optimal for you to stop having, for example, a recurring calf strain, because people who have these recurring injuries tend to be like, oh, maybe my technique's bad, or maybe my exercise selection's bad, or something along those lines. And they're the things you tend to get hyper fixated on, rather than really just pulling back that training load and then slowly building it back up again. The other thing that these type of athletes tend to focus too much on is simple like activation drills. So often you'll see these as the type of people who will get a band and put it around their legs and start doing specific glute activation exercises, or other hip drills or core drills, putting themselves in certain positions to try and like load up in certain areas. But in reality, it's more fluff than it is helpful. But at the time, because you can make it feel hard on one specific muscle group or area, it actually feels very engaging and very useful, and like you're getting something out of it. And then there's other small variables like nutrition, which again, nutrition and sleep and all those things are really important. But if you're hyper focusing on like whether you got 400 grams of carbs instead of 380, or if you got 8 hours sleep instead of 7 hours and 45 minutes sleep, like all of those minor differences probably don't matter at all. It all comes down to total training and total life load. So is the training load appropriate for where you're at? Are you managing stress away from training appropriately? So that's things like home life and work life, your social life. Are all those things in check and appropriate for where you're at right now? And is your planned progression scheme appropriate for the timeline and goal of where you want to go? So let's try and break these concepts down a little bit further. The first thing is that you're trying to over-optimize rather than just focus on exposure to a stress or a stimulus. You're probably the type of person who's looking for the perfect exercise every single time. Like you're swapping exercises super frequently. It might be every single session or every couple of sessions, and you're only ever looking for pain-free movements. The problem here is that there's no consistent stimulus and you're just constantly swapping around those variables of specific exercises, or trying to find the perfect exercise, or looking for only things that don't hurt. And when you're doing all of these things, you can't actually track whether or not you're able to progressively increase your load at an acceptable rate, because that load is just constantly changing. All right, the second concept that I want to break down, this is analysis by paralysis. And this was me all the time. I had the worst paralysis by analysis ever. I would sit there on my computer for hours and hours on end, just researching everything to its limit. Like, I would over-research so much, and I never really got anywhere doing this, because I would start to find out new things, and then I'd start to overthink those things as well, and suddenly I had so much analysis going on in my head and on the computer in front of me is that I never really knew where to start or where to go next. And you're probably having troubles with this too. So if you're someone who is just watching endless amounts of videos or reading endless amounts of articles about your injury or training and rehab and those sorts of topics, or if you're questioning every single training movement or progression scheme that you're doing, and you're second guessing every single rehab program or training program that you're on, you've probably got paralysis by analysis. The biggest problem with this is that it's going to lead to hesitation, inconsistency, and lack of progression. And when you have all of these things mixed together, there's no way you're ever going to get anywhere. The next problem, you're avoiding too much discomfort. If you're someone who over-interprets every single pain signal that you feel, you're constantly trying to eliminate all symptoms or just avoid everything that even hurts a little bit, and you're staying in what you would consider to be a safe zone, then that's also going to cause you issues, and you're probably never going to get where you want to go. And the result of doing all of these things is that you're suffering from underloading at that point. You're not building any tolerance to any stress, and you're going to suffer from long-term stagnation because you can't get a consistent training stimulus happening. So the thing that you're missing here with over-analyzing your rehab is that rehab isn't just about doing specific exercises. It's not just about an exercise. It's not just about a technique. It's not just about how many carbs you ate. It's not just about how much sleep you got. It's about the whole picture. It's about slowly exposing your body to a stimulus or a stress and allowing it to adapt to that stimulus or stress. Total loading is the number one thing that you're going to have to pay attention to get from here back up to here. And the main mindset shift that you need here is to go from thinking to yourself, is this the perfect exercise, to thinking, am I building capacity over time? Because the main thing is to get yourself better and build your body's resilience, is to build up its capacity so that it can handle more work, it can handle more load, and it can handle more stress. Because ultimately, if you're never building those things up, you can do whatever exercise or training program you want, but it's not going to make any difference. You're going to keep getting injured. You, as a smart athlete or a smart individual, are really susceptible to this because you value understanding, you value precision, and you want control over what you're doing, which is awesome. And I think everybody who is serious about training and competition wants that. But you need to be looking at framing it properly so that you know how to make good decisions on where to go when something doesn't quite go to plan. And we need to stop thinking about doing things perfectly, because nothing is going to be perfect. In fact, doing things imperfectly but having a consistent exposure to stress is going to get you further. So to reiterate, the things to focus on: consistency of load, gradual progression, monitoring trends, so not getting caught up on what happens in a single session, because you're probably going to have a relapse at some point. Look at trends over a week or a month. And you also need to be able to accept some level of discomfort. I cannot stress that enough. If you're just constantly looking to be pain-free, it's never going to work out for you. You're allowed to have a little bit of discomfort. Go back and watch my video on pain and how much pain you should be training through, because that'll answer that question for you. Being simple, being consistent, and being progressive. All of these things put together are going to be way better than trying to be complex and trying to be perfect. Again, I was always that person who wanted to be super complex and perfect with what I was doing, but it led me to getting nowhere. All I got was more injuries. All I got was more fatigue, and I never actually got the results that I was looking for. So practical takeaways, questions that you can ask yourself that are going to put you in the right mindset to get your rehab right and stop over-analyzing the process. Number 1, am I progressing my training loads week to week appropriately? Number 2, am I building some tolerance to training load? These are the 2 things you need to ask yourself. If you're not sure, then ask yourself, am I constantly changing exercises? And am I just managing symptoms? Because if you're doing those 2 things, you're probably not doing the former that I just spoke about. The thing is, if you feel stuck, it's probably not because you haven't learnt enough about your body and about your injury. It's more likely going to be the case of over-analysis or fixation on doing specific things right, when, like I said, it's more about training load management that you need to be focused on. You don't need more information, you just need better progression. Thanks for watching again, guys. If this video did resonate with you, please hit the like, share and subscribe button. Post a comment below and I'd be happy to help out as best I can. Thanks again for watching and I look forward to seeing you in that next video.